Hey VC, how's it going? Right, we're back in the Vinyl Community Pub. I'm John, 6 inch Penis 319, and once again, I'm joined by my mate Headley, another fat bearded man talking about records.
Hello, John. Hello. Um, I'm thinking there's just the two of us. You've asked me down the pub, just the
Yeah.
two of us. You've not asked anyone else.
No, and the
Are
reason
you, are
being,
you, are you wanting to talk about something? Is there
well,
something you need to get off your chest, maybe? No?
well, perhaps a few more of these, and we might we might start talking.
I'm
No,
just thinking of ulterior motives of why we've got to be just the two of us.
but there is an ulterior motive, and it's because
Oh,
whenever we invite somebody down the pub, they tend to hog the jukebox. Do you know what I
well,
mean?
they
So
bloody
this
do,
time
don't
we Yes, I say this time we get three picks rather than two picks each. So
they? Oh, yeah, that's all right.
that's
Oh
the
God, I thought
reasoning
you were
for
gonna. I
it.
thought you were gonna wanted to open your heart to me or something like
No,
that.
no,
Phew.
I'm quite
Thank God.
shallow, really. You know what I mean? No, but yeah. Admittedly, the quality of songs might dip a little bit tonight as we have
Oh,
somebody else.
certainly,
Yeah,
certainly. The diversity of songs will
that's
dip,
right. But so at least we
but we
get
won't have
three
any
picks.
Pink Floyd. Steve, I'm looking at you.
Bloody Pink Floyd. He comes down the pub and he plays Pink Floyd.
What's that about?
I don't know. Right. What are you drinking?
I am drinking Ossett Brewery's Yorkshire Blonde IPA Session Ale.
That's
Really
nice.
nice brewery, like Ossett Brewery. Good.
Well, I'm on
West
the lager
Yorkshire.
tonight. Moretti.
Oh,
Yeah, very nice.
yeah. You're like you're down at an Italian restaurant or something.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
not Italian.
it is Italian. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I can't drink many of these because it gives me a bad head. So,
I was looking in our larder to see what we had, and before I found that bottle, I thought I was going to have to go with a big bottle of prosecco. That's the only thing I can find.
that's no good. Right. Okay then.
Right.
So we've got three
Okay.
picks each. Headley, you're first up tonight. So you're going to the bar to get me another Moretti, and you've got to pick a song. What's your first pick?
Okay. My first one is Heads, Hands, and Feet. Warming up the band. I thought I'd warm up the jukebox, but with warming up the band. This is 1971. They are were a sort of a UK country rock, kind of slightly connected to the pub rock scene, maybe, but sort of notable for Albert Lee and Chaz Hodges of Chaz and Dave. And Warming Up the Band is a great tune. It's one that wasn't on any of their albums. And I'm not. It either came out just before their first album or just after their first album. I can't remember, but it would have made a perfect first track on an album.
Seems
A
like a
bit
bit of a
like,
missed
isn't it?
opportunity, doesn't it?
It does sound like it's a
Yeah.
bit like, isn't it? The second Suede album that the first track is called "Introducing the Band."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Yeah. Or a last one where there's a there's one I've got where he names all the band members who played on the album in lieu of them being on the album sleeve. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, that's so this is from '71. Great country tune, country rock kind of tune. Good guitar from Albert Lee, and it was playing with Heads, Hands, and Feet that made Chaz Hodges feel a little bit awkward. So they're playing country music in America with a cod American accent,
Yeah.
and he kind of went, "This is silly." And that's what kind of gave him the idea to sing in his own accent, and therefore led to Chaz and Dave. But weirdly, this was released in '71, but I just noticed that this is actually from 1976, so it's been reissued, and I have no idea why
Well,
it was
so
reissued.
when did the first Chaz and Dave record come out? Was that 76, 77? It's about that sort of time, isn't it?
Yeah, about that's '78, I think.
Oh, right.
But they had the Oily Rags album before that, and then there's
Okay.
an album they did of kind of piano blues, kind of piano rock and roll, which wasn't. It was just I can't remember what the name of it wasn't in their name anyway.
Right.
But yeah, so it's a bit before. But I think the band by 1976, I think Heads, Hands, and Feet had bitten the dust.
Yeah.
So why in 1976? It could be like you're saying. I don't know. It's a bit early. I should come prepared and know these things, really, shouldn't I? That's the thing.
The first time that I heard the name Head, Hands and Feet as a band was seeing the performances that they had on the Old Grey Whistle Test.
That's right, yeah.
Which are fantastic. I think it's only a couple of songs, I think, isn't it? But
yeah,
great clips, great performances. And
so one of them is that.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
One of them is that song. Yeah. So yeah, get things started with warming up the band with Heads, Hands and Feet.
Very nice. Right.
What have you got then?
Right, I'm up next. Right, so I'm going with Zap, More Bounce to the Ounce. Do you know that tune?
Do you know what? I don't. No, I don't.
So basically, it's P-Funk. It's 1980. So this is Roger Troutman, right? So this is their first single. It's the first track on their debut album, and I think they were discovered by George Clinton and Bootsy Collins. Bootsy certainly plays on this, but there's a bit of a falling out because what happened was they started. Roger Troutman started working with George Clinton and Bootsy Collins, and all of a sudden they had this massive hit. And this was at a time when George Clinton's career and Parliament Funkadelic, they're a little bit on the slide going into the 80s. So I think George Clinton basically accused them of robbing his sound, which is basically what happened. You know, this sounds like a Parliament Funkadelic record.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'd say about this is that pretty much the whole of Roger Troutman's career was based around him singing through a talk box, like a vocoder.
Oh, right, yeah.
So this whole song is sung through a vocoder, and it's great, but it's a bit of a gimmick, and like most gimmicks, it sort of wears off after a while, doesn't it? So if you want to base your career around that, you know, it's a little bit like Frank Ifield with his yodeling. Do you know what I mean? In the early
no. You can never have too much yodeling.
Well, there is that, but it didn't work out well for Frank Ifield, did it? He only had
no, it didn't. No, it didn't.
So Roger Troutman is basically the Frank Ifield of funk. That is basically what he is. But yeah, it's a great tune. But actually, when Roger Trappman died, at his funeral, the song somebody performed "Amazing Grace," but they did it through a talk box, through a vocoder. I mean, that's rum, isn't it? But there you go. But I did find that quite amusing. But
what he'd have wanted.
This song doesn't sound dated because it's been sampled so much. So despite the fact it's a 1980s track, you know, it's 44 years old or something like that. It's sort of lived on because it's been sampled by hip hop artists and it's got a real hip hop flavor to it. But yeah, great song. Zap, More Bounce to the Outs.
Right, now I would if you'd have asked me to do this 5 years ago, this would never have happened. This is someone who I used to loathe and really, no, not my thing. And I'm gonna put on an Elvis tune.
Oh wow!
Clean up your own backyard.
Wow.
And I liked the early Elvis, Sun Record stuff, that kind of rock and roll stuff. That was great. And then the early stuff he did when, the Heartbreak Hotel. That's but by the time, and this is 1969. So by 1969, I mean, most of his stuff was, his albums are 70% sentimental twaddle, really. Yes, yeah, I said that, John. I said that. Yeah, I'll stick with it.
I like the '68 comeback special. Fantastic.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Yeah, and I think that what shifts it. And I was unaware of that.
Yeah, okay.
That whole period, really. And this is a track that was, it was the follow-up single to "In the Ghetto." So, and it was actually from a film. What was the film called? The Trouble with Girls. So it wasn't on any of his albums. It was on the soundtrack album to that. Weirdly, this is a bit of country funk. This.
Right.
Written by what's his face, Mac Davis and Billy Strange.
Okay.
So Mac Davis, of course, wrote "In the Ghetto," the previous single, which was the massive seller. This didn't. And do you know what the single after this was?
What was it? Suspicious Minds, something like that?
Yeah, 10 points in the pub quiz. Excellent. Yeah, good stuff. So this is sandwiched between two massive hit records and didn't really do much, but it's a cracking piece of sort of country funk. And yeah, I was saying it's from this film, and this film apparently is set in the 1920s. So what a bit of late 60s country funk is doing in a 1920s themed film. Very anachronistic.
So how did you come across that then? Because I've never heard that song.
Have you not heard this one?
No.
It's just doing that. It's going down the internet sort of searches and blogs and things of country funk, and suddenly, someone does a playlist on YouTube or something, and you go through them and you've heard of 90% of them, and suddenly this, But this, I mean, of course, Strange and Davis, Mac Davis and Billy Strange also wrote A Little Less Conversation. Or at least Mac Davis. Yeah. So. I mean, Mac Davis, his albums are very similar to Elvis's, actually, at this sort of period into the early 70s, where there's a couple of killer, banging, funky tunes, and then a lot of ballads that I find quite tricky.
Yeah, I mean, In the Ghetto is one of those songs which has been recorded by both soul singers and country singers. It falls in both camps, doesn't it, really? But it's a song I've never got on with, whether it be Elvis or...
Really?
Candy Staten or Betty Swan. It just doesn't do it for me, that song.
You heard Dolly Parton do it? Hers is good.
I don't think I've heard Dolly's version, no.
Yeah, Dolly's good is good. Dolly's good is good. Yeah, Dolly Parton's good is good.
But I do like A Little Less Conversation. I do like Suspicious Minds. I like that sort of sound of Elvis. So I reckon I'll
Well, you will like this, John, and everyone else in the pub is going to dig this one. If YouTube allows us to play Elvis.
Well, let's see how we get on.
Back porch preacher preaching at me, acting like he wrote the golden rule, shaking his fist and speeching at me, shouting from his soapbox like a fool. Come Sunday morning, he's lying in bed, his eyes all red from the wine in his head, wishing he was dead, but he ought to be heading for a Sunday school. Clean up your own backyard. Oh, don't you hand me none of your wine. Clean up your own backyard. You tend to your business, I'll tend to mine.
Right, okay, I'm up. So this is my very knackered copy of Fine Young Cannibals with Johnny Come. So Fine Young Cannibals had some, bona fide big hits, international hits with, Good Thing and She Drives Me Crazy, hits both sides of the pond. This came out in the mid-'80s, and I think this is a lovely, it's a bit of a soul boy tune, basically. You've got a lovely, it's got quite a subtle ska thing going on all the way through it. It's got this little guitar part which is just sits on the offbeat, which gives it a slight ska feel to it, and you've got this beautiful muted trumpet which plays throughout the song as well. And yeah, great song. It's quite, you think of that time at 85, 86, around that sort of time, it's very much, the UK charts are full of songs by the likes of Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Duran Duran, these big, massive, huge sounding records. This is subtle in comparison. And it's got that vocal by Roland Gift. Now, this is something I come back to every time. 1980s, largely UK male vocalists. I like how imperfect their voices are, whether it be, Kevin Rowland or Edwin Collins or Lloyd Cole, whoever it may be, Green Gartside. It's totally unique vocals. And Roland Gift is exactly the same. You know it's a Fine Young Cannibals record as soon as you hear his voice. It's not a perfect voice by any means. Obviously he's black, but it's not a soul voice. It's just a great pop voice, and as I say, totally unique and really suits this song. So that's what I'm going with. Fine Young Cannibals and Johnny Come Home. Do you know it?
I think I've got the album that's on. Is it their second album or is it their first album? I can't remember.
Their first album, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
First album. No, I think I've got their second album. But I like them. There's something about their sound that, because I have a bit of a problem with some of the 80s stuff. Duran Duran are really not up my street, and some of that stuff, ABC as well. I can't. Like you're saying, it's that slightly boombastic, big production, and there's something about that. It's like a kind of, it's like a modern 80s version of Motown or something.
Yes,
there's something kind of, it's a sort of a British sort of indie soul almost. That they're doing. Interesting. I think Roland Gift, I'm not sure if he was born in, but was from Hull, I think, or at least his mother was well known in Hull. She was an eccentric that ran a junk shop, and it was the sort of place that she was absolutely crazy. But she was like the most famous person in Hull, because she would, she'd go on tirades at people and throw people out of her shop if they looked at her wrongly, and so clearly her son wasn't sending her any any money in the post.
Fair enough, because he sort of went on to have a bit of an acting career as well, didn't he? He was in Scandal, the Perfumo film.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he had a bit of part in that, I think. So I think after the band broke up, he tried to go that sort of way, as most pop stars do. David Bowie or whatever. So, but yeah, this is a great tune. I say it's a proper soul boy tune. But what's about vocalists? That's my issue with modern pop music, and this is me sounding like an old man now. And I was giving out about this to my wife over the weekend, is that modern pop songs, I don't have an issue with them at all, apart from the use of auto-tune. And I don't mean it in the gimmicky way, just the fact auto-tune is thrown at everything. And all of those vocalists that I just mentioned there, none of their vocals were perfect, but that's what made them totally unique. Now, what happens now is that everything starts to sound the same. All of the rough edges are removed.
Yeah,
it just goes through this process. Everything sounds the same. It does my head in, and I think to a degree we're missing out on a lot of great pop songs and great pop performances because everything is just being, I don't know, auto-tuned to death. But there you go. That's my rant over.
Oh dear, that's certainly this is the right conversation for a pub. Oh yeah,
it is.
I can only imagine the look of interest that your wife had on her face while you were.
She just looked at me blankly like she always does.
Louise has a tendency to ask me a question, and then when I go in at length on it, she has this look where she goes, "Why did I do that? Why did I do that?"
She was just being polite, Headley.
I know. Right. Okay. A third record. This is unique. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm having a slightly a sort of a senior moment. I have a sneaky suspicion I might have done this one before, but I'm going to do it again. It bears repeating, and that is Saint Etienne with "You're in a Bad Way."
You're good. You're good to go. You're good to go, Hedley. We've not had that before.
Oh, we're not. Brilliant. This is one of my favourite singles of the 90s, I think. Yeah. It's a great mix of sort of dance indie and 60s pop.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else has ever really done it quite successfully as that. It sounds twee, but in a good way. Yeah. It's not some. Now, I didn't know this, that Saint Etienne was started with was it
Bob Stanley.
Bob Stanley and Pete Wiggs.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that their first album is actually, they had a number of different vocalists, of which one of them was Sarah Cracknell. Right. I didn't know that. Because they originally thought, it'd be nice to sort of have a sort of rolling cast of singers. But then they got Sarah Cracknell in, and they went, actually, I think she's really good. We'll stick with her. So that's what it is. And this, it on the album, it has that brilliant sample from Billy Liar, with a man can lose himself in London, lose himself. And it's not on the single. It's a shame. But this is, now interestingly, this is the album version is produced by Saint Etienne, but this version is produced by Alan Tarney, who James Griffiths will know this. I've had a conversation about Alan Tarney with him before. He produced some Cliff Richard, co-wrote or wrote some songs for him, some of his big hits. He was briefly, I think, in the late 70s in The Shadows. And then he produced A-ha, doing Take On Me and The Sun Always Shines on TV. So he got into production work. So yes, it's interesting that they've got a different production on the single than to the album version. So yeah, no, it's great. It actually got to number 12 in the charts as well, which is pretty good for a kind of a tune in the 90s like that. So but really nice.
I don't have the album, so is the production on the single noticeably different to the album version?
Not really. I mean, maybe what Alan Tarney did is just chop off the sample. I don't know, but I need to go back to it and have a listen to see if it is any different. I tell you what, it's interesting. The CD single of this that has 4 tracks on it. What they actually do on that is they've added links, they've added samples and things in between, like an album you would do like they've done on their albums. Yeah, they do it on the EP. Oh, so right. There's sort of samples from 60s and 70s TV programs. Of course, this this has a line where it mentions an evening in with Bruce and the Old Generation game. Bruce Forsyth. Yeah. And apparently in a I don't know, a book or an interview, Bob Stanley talked about this being their Bruce Forsyth's tune. So
obviously Bob Stanley is, well, he basically makes a living aside from being in St Etienne as sort of a musical smart ass, doesn't he? So
that's kind of what Saint Etienne was. Yeah, Saint Etienne was him bringing all these kind of interests together to kind of make a sort of thing, and that's kind of what he's done with all these compilations that he now does. Yeah. He's kind of one of these sort of people that's interested in so many different types of music. Yeah. And he kind of really wants to evangelically kind of support them and introduce people to them, doesn't he? Yeah. Because was there a number of them he did for was it Sainsbury's?
Sainsbury's, yeah. So yes, he basically was brought in to put together a few compilations, because they started selling records, didn't they? Started selling vinyl. So they wanted some of their own Sainsbury's branded compilations, so he put it together.
Some of those are quite collectible now. They go for quite a bit of money, actually.
Are they really?
Mm.
Because I must admit, I did look at them. And I remember going to do my weekly shop
Yeah,
and looking at the random records I had there, which basically consists of like Queen's Greatest Hits, Legend by Bob
yeah,
Marley,
that's right.
Rumors
Yeah, yeah,
by Flitterman, Dark Side of the
yeah.
Moon. That's sort of where they're pitching it. But I did look at these compilations, and first of all, the artwork was really, really cheap, and I thought, that don't look good. And the track listing was obviously pitched in line with the records I was selling, so it was stuff like
Yeah,
the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac,
yeah,
so which is fine,
yeah.
but there wasn't anything too adventurous. Whereas when I saw that Bob Stanley was going to be doing them, I did think actually this might be quite
Yeah,
quirky, but it wasn't.
yeah. No,
There you go.
there you go.
Dust is burnt and your coffee's cold, and you leave all the posts 'cause it's nothing but bills again. Home from work, put the TV on, get your kicks watching Bruce on the old generation game. Just dial my number, I've got some plans for you. You're in a bad way and I can help you through. You're in a bad way, every day seems just the same. Just dial my number, call my name.
Right, okay. A bit of pop punk. So I'm going
Ooh.
with Generation X and King Rocker.
I
You
love
know?
that tune.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that tune.
So I bought this when I was a young teenager. I bought it just obviously a used 7-inch copy of it, and 'cause I've got a bit of a soft spot for Billy Idol.
You look like you do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think he certainly looks better than me. He's got 30 years on me. He still looks better. But because obviously he was in Generation X, so he was a bona fide punk, at that stage. But then went into the 80s and became part of the whole MTV generation, and he really benefited from that, didn't he, with his bleached blonde hair, with his videos for Rebel Yell and I don't know what other big pop tunes did he have.
And his Elvis snarl.
Yeah, well that's it, Well, his snarl was a little bit more Cliff Richard than Elvis, wasn't it? He was he's the punk Cliff Richard. That's
Yeah,
what he was,
yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah.
So, but yeah, I love the song. I think it's a great tune, and I think he's got a great voice as well, Billy Idol. Yeah, and his career went on. He had a good innings really, because obviously he started off in the late 70s, Generation X. He went through that whole, new wave thing in the early 80s, and then into the big MTV stuff in the mid to late 80s. And then he sort of hooks on the back of the rock crowd in the early 90s, in the Doors film, of course.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in the Doors film, the Oliver Stone. But then once grunge came along, that just killed him off along with all the other rock stuff. And I think he put out an album, Cyberpunk, in about 94, which was is one of the most sort of maligned albums of all time. It's absolutely slated by the critics. But that's pretty much did his career, really, But he had a good go. He had a good 15 years, and I think this is a great tune.
It is a great tune. It's really cool. I like that. I was introduced to it. It came on a free CD with some music magazine, and I had no idea. It's the first time I'd ever heard of Generation X. I had no idea that Billy Idol was the singer, and it was only later when I sort of looked into it that I discovered that. But yeah, top tune.
He's actually touring at the moment. So there's Billy Idol and Tony James out of Generation X, and they're touring with Paul Cook and Glenn Matlock out of the Sex Pistols, and they're playing a mixture of Generation X and Sex Pistols.
Generation Sex, are they?
Generation Sex, yeah, which is a great name.
It is a good name.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
but they're meant to be very good.
It's better than McBusted.
Yeah, desperate.
Don't let Louise say that. Hear me say that though. She loves that sort of stuff.
Jailhouse rockaroo straight out Memphis. That's the way it comes down. Well,
So there you go. That's 6 records, mate.
6. Did you realise that there's less chatting because we haven't got anyone interesting with us?
I know, yeah. That's what we need. We need somebody
It's
interesting.
be a quick one.
Yeah. So next time we'll have to try and mix it up a bit, get somebody in. But yeah, good. I enjoyed that.
Cool. Thanks, John. Always a pleasure.
Excellent. Right, that's that. See you next time.
Bye bye.
All right.